Hello everyone, and welcome to Tips for Automating Excel Data Processing Tasks with FME, an introductory webinar with FME and Excel. Today we have Mark Stokes with us. I am Tia McKillop. We also have our third star of the webinar, FME, as well as we have Matt and Jen on Q&A. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to shoot them a question. Today we'll start off with a brief introduction to FME, and then go through why process Excel data with FME, and we'll go through some demos of that, and we'll end with a Q&A. Should you ask any questions during the webinar that don't get answered, we will be sending up a follow-up email. As well, we'll send a follow-up email with the materials of the webinar. All right, so FME is a data translation software program that's used around the world, and it's used in a variety of sectors, such as oil and gas and transportation. The three components of FME are FME Desktop, FME Server, and FME Cloud. FME Desktop is where the workspaces are created, and these are created using readers and writers to read in your data and write it out, and transformers in between. FME offers over 450 transformers to translate or manipulate the data into something you need. These workspaces that you create in FME Desktop can be published to FME Server or FME Cloud, where you can automate them, set them to run on a schedule, set up a self-serve environment for users, or continuously run them for real-time data processing. You can connect to over hundreds of formats with FME. FME 2017 supports over 350 formats. In the beginning, we had started off with CAD and GIS and moved on to database and tabular data. And then we moved on to raster, point clouds, 3D, and onwards to the web, big data, and cloud. Today we'll be our webinar will be primarily focusing on one of the 350 formats we support, and that is Microsoft Excel. So the overall agenda of our webinar today is we'll be going through these 6 different topics. So FME provides you the tools to validate your data, to generate reports for any data, and to automate repetitive workflows. Most of these topics will be looking at FME Desktop, though Mark will lead a demo involving FME Server. So how many of us are familiar with Microsoft Excel? We know it's often used for reporting and analysis. We all know how great Excel is at creating charts, graphs, reports, and even referencing cells that are contained in other sheets. But what you may not know about Microsoft Excel, especially in regards to FME, is you can use it in FME independent of Microsoft Office, independent of 32-bit or 64-bit operating systems, as well as independent of platform. So really, there's no reason why you shouldn't be using Microsoft Excel with FME.
Tia, shall we do a hands up to see who's using Excel at all?
Yeah, so how many of you are using Excel on its own right now?
See if people can stick up their hands to give us an idea of what percentage of people are using. Everybody's a little shy, but it's at least half of the attendees in the webinar. We've got about 300 people watching us, joining us today from around the world, all over the place. So thanks for joining us.
And then how many of you using Excel are using it with FME right now?
A few hands up.
All right, great. Well, you're all going to learn something today then.
Yeah.
So, all right, our first topic today is preserve data integrity. So a lot of the common tasks you do with tabular data you can do with FME, such as appending or merging. So pending is done when there's typically no change to the data model or schema. And this is equivalent to copying and pasting records from one sheet onto after the last record of another sheet. Merging is done when there is a change to the table and you have a common attribute on which to merge on. This will produce a different data model in your output. So we can do both of these relatively simply with FME. So here I have a workspace where I have downtown trees and Kitsilano trees. Our downtown trees, just open it up. So you can see we have our tree ID, our address, diameter, common name, and importantly our neighborhood. So these are all just downtown trees. However, somebody else who has the same table structure as I do has filled in the Kitsilano trees. So it's the same thing here, except for the trees are in the Kitsilano neighborhood instead of the downtown. We can use FME to append the Kitsilano trees onto the downtown trees. So that way the rows are sequential from downtown to Kitsilano. So I've just done this by having the two different readers and they write out to one writer. So we can just run. And we'll see that our new Vancouver Trees workbook has our downtown neighborhood trees, followed by our Kitsilano trees. So we've done this in FME, and it's taken about half a second versus copy and pasting it from one Excel workbook onto the next. We can also merge, so I'm just going to steal this downtown trees. And as I've shown before, we have this common name attribute on the table. So let's just pull it up again. So here we have the common name, but we don't have the genus or species. I do, however, have another workbook with a table with the genus, species, and the common name. So perhaps the users who are filling in this downtown spreadsheet don't happen to know Latin or aren't budding arborists. We can use this essentially as a lookup table to add these two columns onto our downtown trees spreadsheet. So I'll just add the genus species table on. When using Excel with FME, the first row tends to be the one that the column names are. You can change to say it's the second row or something like that, but by default it is the first row, and that's all right for our data because it is the column names there. So now we'll see that we have our genus species with the common name as well as our downtown trees with the common name. Using the feature merger, we can merge based on the common attribute between these two tables, which is our common name. And new to FME 2017, you can just type on the canvas to add a writer. So we'll use Excel again. And for lack of creativity, I will call this fully named trees. And our sheet definition is automatic because we are adding those two other attributes there. And these are downtown. So now we'll see here that we have the same attributes we did on our incoming downtown trees, but with genus and species. So give it a run. And here we go. We have our downtown trees now with the common name and the genus species. So by doing such tasks as appending and merging with FME, you can help preserve your data integrity. These tasks are relatively easy to set up in Workbench and also very quick to perform. All right, Mark.
Okay. Thanks, Tia. So just looking at some other scenarios that we could have with working with Excel data, Tia's already shown us how we can integrate different data sets. So those are two different data sets of the same format, which were two Excel files. But what we've seen a lot of the time with users is that they want to integrate other data into their Excel data to create other Excel spreadsheets or completely other data sets. So FME can access many data sources. As Tia said earlier on, we support 300 plus formats in FME. And so what we're going to do here in a little example is to work with some data from the Vancouver Open Data site. So that's an FTP site where the City of Vancouver lists a whole bunch of the public data that it has available. And we can grab data right from that data site. Okay, so in data preparation, we can merge these many formats together, and then what we usually see is that people need to clean up the data in some way, prep it, or add some value. So that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to open up a little workspace that just illustrates how you can pull together data from different data sets, clean it up or do some data preparation, keep the good, filter out the bad, and clean out the ugly, and work with that. So this is a slightly more complicated workflow than the one that Tia was illustrating there. So what we've got on the left-hand side here is several different data sources that we're working with. If I click on one of these, you can see that it's coming straight down from the FTP site on the open data site. So we've got an FTP address here on the reader. So we're pulling that data live from the data source. We're reading JSON data from that data source as well. And we're also loading in some data from our Salesforce site that we have here, which is our customer data repository. Then what we can do is we can clean up the data and add some value in various ways. So we've got a geocoder here that is geocoding the data as it passes through here to get us the addresses or the locations of that data from our Salesforce accounts. We can merge data together, as Tia has already shown us, and we can also do spatial overlays. So we can do spatial queries or spatial joins within FME. And then what we can do is write out the results. And in this case, I'm writing them out to an Excel file. And we can just have a quick look at those results over here. And so these would, so this little workflow basically is just pulling together the best lunch sites from the street vendors from that Vancouver open data site and matching those with the customer locations that we have so that we know what good street vendors you can go to when you want to take one of your customers out for lunch.
Sounds good.
So quite a wide range of tools that we've got in there for merging together disparate data, many, many different readers, and then a whole bunch of tools in FME for merging that data together and adding some value to that data set. So one of the other areas that we can work in with FME is actually reading Excel data sets and preparing that data to go into other formats. So again, just as we have on the reading side, FME can write to a wide range of formats, again, about 350 plus formats on our writer side that we support, ranging from spatial data to databases and tabular data like Excel or CSV files if you want to write out to those. So preparing the data to get it out there, what we need to do is typically add some value, same tools that if we're reading from Excel are available to us when we're writing out to these wide range of different formats. Again, geocoding here, doing spatial joins, doing some data cleanup and so on. And so I've got a little example here that we can have a quick look at in our workspace. Just to have a quick example of what that might look like in FME. So this is a little example where I'm reading from a spreadsheet that I've got. I'm joining it with some neighborhood data. Geocoding, in this case, I'm doing a reverse geocoding. So I've got the lat long of the data points that I want to work with, and I'm doing a reverse geocoding to get the address back. Doing a quick spatial overlay, using one of our tools called the Attribute Manager, which is the one-stop shop for a lot of attribution type things, including simple stuff like just renaming attributes, which is what I'm doing here. And then in this case here, I'm writing this out to SQL Server. So we can just quickly run that workflow. That data has got some spatial characteristics, a couple of lat longs that we're using to create the coordinates and the geometry for that data. Out it goes to SQL Server, and then we can use the FME Data Inspector to get a quick preview of what that data looked like after we wrote it out to SQL Server. So it's going to bring up the FME data inspector here. Here's the map of these data points, and we can scroll through those. We can see that we've added the address from the reverse geocoding, and we've also added into this data set the neighborhood name from the neighborhood spatial file, which was a map info file. So again, merging together data from different sources, adding a little bit of value, and sending it out to whatever format you need to work with. One of the things that a lot of people have with Excel is, because the Excel is really a very loose format and people can type in whatever they want, is validating the data as it comes through. Technology is a kind of a data amplifier. If you read in some data from somewhere, like an Excel spreadsheet, fire that off into a database to distribute it to a wider branch of users, if you don't do any data quality checking and the data is poor, then all you've done is amplified that issue of the poor data. But if you distribute good quality data, then you've amplified the benefits of that data with your data set. So FME's got some great data validation tools in it that you can work with. The key one there is the surprisingly called transformer called the attribute validator. So that's for validating attributes. If you do have geometries on some of your data, like points or line work, we also have a geometry validator. And there's a bunch of other tools that FME has in there to work with that data. So what we've got here is a very simple workspace that I've got that will validate some of the data that we have here from a little point data set that I've got, and then actually generate a little report that will give us some idea of the quality of that data. So I'm just reading from a simple Excel spreadsheet. It's just a series of point data and some different attribution on it. And then we've got this attribute validator tool here in FME. And we can add in different rules that you want to look at that attribution on what kind of rule you want to add. And these are ones. So we've got some regular expressions that we can run through here, look at coded data types, ranges, coded domains. Here we've got some code prefix attributes, so we wanted to make sure that it's with those within that list and so on. So that's the attribute validation. And then on the reporting side, what we can do is we can build up a little report here. This is just a summary report of all the data quality issues that we might encounter here. I've got some statistics calculators thrown in here that will do some simple statistics to create a worksheet in that data set that's a summary data set. So let's have a look at what that might look like on the output side. And so here is that simple report. This is the validation report itself. So these are the error messages that FME gives back for the attribute that's failed that test. The number of sample values of 60 was out of range. One of the code prefixes was not within the list of code prefixes and so on. And it's also giving us all the list of the attributes on that feature so that we could find that record in our Excel spreadsheet and find the results. And then here's just a quick summary of the errors themselves. So there were 3 bad code prefixes, a few bad number of samples, and some bad station IDs, which were supposed to be unique, I guess, in this particular data set. So data validation is a very strong part of people's workflows, typically in FME. And so this is a little example just illustrating how we might work through that and create a validation report. Okay, so that's the validation. Then what we can do is we might want to automate some of these tasks. The whole point of using FME to work, or one of the aspects of using FME to work with your Excel data is to make repetitive workflows that you can run again and again, and simplify some jobs, just even if they're simple replacement jobs like cutting and pasting, like Tio was showing us earlier on. So what we have is our FME server product is the tool where you can automate these workflows, run the workspaces on demand, on a schedule, or in response to an event. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to take that data validation workflow that we were looking earlier on, and we can publish that up to an FME server, and then look at how we could automate some jobs so that people who don't have FME on their desktop can run tasks that you've put together and get the results that they need from their workflows. So what we can do here is within the FME desktop, we can say that we want to publish up a workflow to the FME server. I'm just going to post that up to a temporary site there and publish it up. And there it goes up into an FME server. And I'm actually running this FME server up on the cloud somewhere. So that's where it is. Okay, so what does that look like on the side of FME server? So what this workflow that I've put together is I want somebody to be able to take their Excel file, push it up onto a website, and have FME run that validation task, and then send them back the report that says whether their data passed the validation or not. All right, so let's go and find my FME server. Okay, so these are my FME cloud management console, and then this is the actual FME server that I'm running here. And I've got what we would call a repository, which is just basically a folder that contains the workflows that I'm interested in. So this is one of the workspaces that we can run here. And we could run that right on this website. Now, these are our default web pages that we ship with FME server. Most people would then take these web pages and customize them for a particular task and build a very simple web page that somebody might want to use. Mm-hmm. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this, what I've done is set up this FME server configuration with what we call a publication, which is, in this case, this publication is a directory watcher. And so what I've done is I've got a directory watcher tool here. It's watching one of the resource directories on our FME server. And anytime a file is created or modified within that directory, this directory watcher will grab it and then do something with it. And that's something that it will do is send that file off to the FME server, FME workspace, which is sitting in this repository here, which is the one that I posted up earlier on. This workflow I had modified slightly, and it's got an emailer transformer in it. And so when we do that validation, that emailer transformer is going to email us the results to that workflow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to the resources folder. This is the data folder where that data is sitting. Going to get rid of the one that we had there earlier. And just go and grab one of those files and drag it up onto there. And then that directory watcher is scanning these directories about every minute or so. And so when it scans that directory, it'll trigger that workspace, run the validation task, and then it'll email off to me what that job is going to look like, or the results of my translation. So I'm just going to log into my email that I had to shut down earlier on. So we'll just get an email location. Okay, and so there's my email, my Gmail site. This is from the test workflow, so that directory watcher hasn't scanned that file yet, but this is from the one that I ran just before the webinar started. So this is the email that we've configured in that email, the transformer, and here's the validation report that obviously is similar to the one that we were looking at earlier on. And so we can create a workflow that somebody can run without knowing anything about FME and get that up to our site.
All right.
You want to take it from there, Tia?
Yeah. So the last topic we're going to cover today is generating reports for any data. So in this example, we're going to be looking at an Excel workbook that has been beautifully formatted. We have charts, we have pivot tables, we have multiple sheets in there, but we want to add more data to it. Or we want to take that formatting and apply it to a different city. So the data we're looking at is Vancouver's total precipitation, total rain, and total snow. So as you can see in the slide here, it's just for years 2005 to 2009. And Vancouver's total precipitation looks awfully similar to its total rain. We can use this Excel workbook as a template file when creating new sheets. So inside the workbook, we have 4 sheets like I alluded to. We have the summary and chart, 2 pivot table ones, and lastly, and I think most importantly, our raw data. Our raw data sheet has this weather table named range, and this named range is referenced throughout the workbook to update and populate these tables and charts. You'll notice that we do have a cumulative column at the end, and that just summarizes the values across the year. So I'll open up FME, and here we have our workspace. So what we have here is weather data, and here it's from 1940 all the way to 2012. You'll notice that we don't have that cumulative column here, as well as our raw data ranges go from C to N across the columns and starts at row 2. So we'll use FME to insert this into that raw data sheet, into the weather table named range, and we'll also create that cumulative column at the end. So let's get that open. So here I've just added that Excel spreadsheet as a reader, the weather data there. And on our counter, we've set it to 2. That's just letting FME know that our actual values that we want to use start at row 2. Because you'll remember with Excel, we're reading in the first row as our column or attribute names. In our attribute manager, we're not really doing much to the majority of the attributes. However, we are creating this new one called cumulative dot formula. The dot formula tells FME that we're using an Excel formula to populate these values. And the formula we're using is the sum. So this is sum C of whatever row we're on to N. So this is going to be the sum of January to December for row 5 or row 4, etc., all the way throughout the table. On our writer, we have set the template file here. So this is what I was showing you in the slideshow. So here it is. We have our named range weather table, which is all referenced throughout all the sheets. So we have 2 different pivot tables here, and then we have a nice summary section with our nice chart. So we're going to use FME to recalculate all this with our increase of data values. Cancel out. On our writer, we've done something special with the sheet name. This raw data / weather table tells FME to write to this sheet and this named range. So we're going to take all these raw data values and populate the named range here, which in turn is going to be referenced throughout all the other sheets and update our tables and chart. All right, so here is our new Excel workbook. Open it up. We'll see that we have populated the weather table named range. We've also added our cumulative column here with the totals. And in turn, we've updated our pivot tables. And our nice chart at the summary sheet, which does show, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Vancouver, but we do get a lot of rain, and our total precipitation here is nearly identical to our total rainfall from 1940 to 2012. All right, and Mark, you had another.
Yes, if you want to show up just a completely different style of report, because we haven't really talked very much about imagery here. So this is a report that somebody created as a metadata catalog. So one of the workflows we had put together some time ago was building a metadata catalog of a whole bunch of disparate data sets. And so we did that, put that into actually a NoSQL database. And then they wanted to see what data was available. And so what you could do is query that NoSQL database and then pull back a metadata catalog of what was in the database. And this is just an illustration of that. But what was we thought was interesting here is that we could throw in a thumbnail image of the data that was in each particular data set that was available. And so as you could just scroll down there very slowly. Sure. You can see a whole bunch of different images. Some of the data was traditional vector data in the data catalog, and some of it was imagery, and we were just adding those thumbnails to that Excel report. So it's just a different style of report, but it did illustrate that you can throw in images into your Excel spreadsheets on the way out as well.
Mm-hmm. Very useful. And with that, we'll open it up to some Q&A. So if you want to chat your questions.
We've got a whole raft of questions up here, so I can kick some off. So somebody was saying here, asking about FME working with Tableau and Power BI. So the answer is yes, FME can do that. They were asking if they can reformat Excel directly into Tableau or Power BI. I don't know about Tableau. I don't know whether that reads Excel spreadsheets, but we do have a Tableau writer in FME, so you can write the data to your Tableau projects and then have Tableau serve up the data from there. As far as Power BI is concerned, Power BI doesn't really have a format per se because it basically reads from any of the Microsoft data sets. So that would be Azure, SQL Server, Excel, and so on. So really there, as long as you can get the data into one of those formats, then you'll be able to load it into Power BI. So around that, again, the data quality is an issue for all of these business intelligence tools. So FME could be used to improve the quality, do some data validation before you throw that data into your business intelligence tool to work with. Somebody was asking, they're from Belgium, and they just wanted to check that we supported international character sets. We should do. We have a wide range of overseas customers. FME does support international character sets, so that should riffle through. In some cases, it's kind of based on the native language support that your computer's running, so that might have to match the character sets that is working with. One thing we didn't point out, people have been asking, is that all the examples that we've been showing today and the PowerPoints and the recording of this webinar will be posted up on our website. Everybody who's attending the webinar, there's about 330 of you, will receive a follow-up email with all those links once those are pushed up. So that takes a couple of days to get that up on our website, but you will receive all the materials that we've been working with here.
All right, we have another question asking if it's possible to format cells. You can set on the writer. You can set some custom number formatting here, as well as fonts and colors as well. So typically what we've done in some examples is set a custom number format. So if a value's over 100, it becomes red. If it's under 100, it becomes black. Like I said, you can also do the font and font colors there, as well as the fill.
Yeah, right. Somebody was asking whether we support a SQL Select against Excel. Actually, we don't. Microsoft itself does support, I think, simple SQL Selects against Excel. We're not using the Microsoft Read and Writer, but that gives us the platform independence, but the one we have doesn't allow you to do a select directly to your Excel file. So you would read the Excel file in and then use some of our filtering tools like the tester or the test filter to select the data that you want to work with specifically within Excel. So that would be once the data is read in. We've got somebody's asking about, Tia was showing the feature merger tool in FME for merging together data. So we have actually a wide range of tools for doing that same task, depending on the data that you're working with. So in her case, she was merging together 2 Excel spreadsheets and was using a transformer called the feature merger, which basically does an in-memory join within FME. We have a wide range of other tools for doing equivalent things. There's something called the SQL executor. So if you're working with more of a database format that supports SQL, you could actually do a SQL query right to a database. If you're not that comfortable with SQL, there's a kind of a simplified version of that tool. It's called the database joiner, and that allows you to do a kind of a quick query to a data set. If the data set supports SQL, then it'll sort of format that query as a SQL call. If it's a bit of a dumber format like CSV, it will read the data in and then do the join in a similar way to the feature merger does, but it's kind of a simplified join tool in FME. So there's a lot of tools for merging data together depending on the kind of data that you're working with and the kind of join that you need to do. And I think that's probably, there are a lot of questions there. That's probably the questions that stand out for me. You see any other there quickly there, Tia?
Yeah, I'm just looking through them.
If we didn't get to a specific question that you asked here, we've got Matt and Jen who have been answering the questions, and we'll do a bit of follow-up to make sure that any outstanding questions we didn't get to today have been responded to. The other thing is that we did want to point out is that on the PowerPoint slides themselves, at the bottom of many of the pages were useful links. So when you get the PowerPoint slides, you'll see links back to various resources that we have to illustrate what's going on at each stage of the game.
Some additional links that will bring your attention to are 3 important links, I'd say. It's knowledge.safe.com. You can access our community there where there's lots of online users who are very friendly, and you can post questions or seek out resources if you need them. We also have the hub where you can discover new transformers and custom formats. And lastly, we have training.safe.com where we provide free FME training. So just go on there and you can pick which kind of training you want to take. And we do have a free ebook called The Guide to Excel in FME, where you can read more about using Excel with FME.
And just around that training, so that training is available on demand, so you can download a recording and all the training materials. But we also run it on the schedule. If you go to trainingsafe.com, that is instructor-led. You get an Amazon remote desktop machine to do the exercises. So that is instructor-led free training that you can work and get to learn FME Workbench.
Yes.
So that's one of the best ways to get started with FME.
It's really a great resource. So I guess on behalf of Mark and myself and Jen, Matt, and Stephanie, everyone working behind the scenes today, thank you for joining us. Do visit safe.com and you can get a free trial of FME there. And also we do have live chat if you need to ask us any questions. And please do check out the community because it is a great resource for users, especially new users or experienced users.